What's your favorite movie in every single genre? Here's mine. Hey there guys, and welcome back to Dino Review. So during the week I actually got tagged in a video to give my own personal favourite movies out of every single genre. So that was by Mike Carpet's Movies. I'm actually going to leave a link in the description for his channel, so if you want to check out his list you can, of course. And I'm also going to be tagging Wolfmans, Nards, Movie Worm and Carlinio 9 to give their own favourite movies. Now we're going to kick things off with my favourite genre, the horror genre. And coming in at first place always for me is Halloween. For me, I could talk for hours on why John Carpenter's Halloween is my absolute favourite horror movie and also my favourite movie. From the directing to John Carpenter's iconic score and of course Michael Myers, so the shape itself. The movie has pretty much stood the test of time. 40 years later it still holds up, and it actually gave way to a huge amount of slasher movies, both good and bad. You have Laurie Strode, who for me is the definitive final girl. She's a character you genuinely care about when you're watching the movie and you want to make sure she survives. But the movie, it is scary, it's full of suspense, and it does all that without any gore. It's by far my favourite horror movie and one that everyone really should check out. Next up we have the comedy category, and my favourite in this is easily Airplane. I watched this movie countless times and it's always very funny to watch. The jokes just don't get old. I think the jokes in this one, they are kind of silly, slapstick and over the top jokes, but that's just my style of comedy. I like quick jokes that are shocking and they get to the point. The cast in this one is also superb, as is the story. It pretty much dissects the action movies that were around at the time, but it does it in a really hilarious way. From the opening sequence where we make fun of Jaws to the many different action cameos we get in the movie, it's a great one to watch and it honestly still holds up today. I actually watched this a couple of weeks ago and I still had a blast with the movie. Next we have the animation category. I'm not a huge animation fan, but my absolute favourite is Toy Story 3. Just the entire Toy Story franchise I love watching. I watched it at the perfect age, so it's just always stood by me. The Toy Story movies have a lot of comedy, but they also have a lot of heart, and the best of that is in Toy Story 3. There's a lot going on with this movie. There's a lot of characters to juggle, but they pull it off really well. Of course, that pretty much now legendary scene towards the end of the movie has a great mixture of suspense, terror, comedy and heart, and that just kind of sums up what Toy Story is all about. Next we got sci-fi, and this was a little bit of a harder one to pick. There's a lot of sci-fi movies I like, but they tend to get mixed in with action and horror. But if I had to just go with downright sci-fi, it would be Arrival. I've only seen this one recently enough, maybe in the last year, and it's a fascinating look on how language is so important to us. The story centers around an alien species coming to Earth and humans really trying to understand why they're there, and they do it all through learning different languages and trying to communicate with each other. It's a brilliant movie. It definitely is more of a slow burn. There's no action really in this one, but it's still really well made. Honestly, this is one I think most people may not have seen, so if you haven't seen it already, I highly recommend checking it out. Next up is Triller, and I'm going to give this one to The Invisible Man. Now some people might see this as horror or thriller, but it's just a very well done movie. Elizabeth Moss for me absolutely steals the entire movie. Her performance in this is sensational and you just can't keep your eyes off her. Just the story arc that she goes through of this woman in this abusive relationship who finally escapes and gets her life back, only for the whole thing to fall apart again. As well as that, the directing, how they set up certain scenes with the Invisible Man is so simple. It's such a simple technique, but also quite terrifying. A lot of the times you just don't know where he is, but you know there's a presence in every room that she happens to be in. The movie is downright scary, but it also has some really heartwarming moments. It's a great movie guys to check out, and easily my favourite movie of 2020. Next is the drama category, and for me I'm going to give this one to Crash. For me, Crash is a brilliant movie. I know when it first came out, people were a bit annoyed it actually won the Academy Award. A lot of people were saying Brokeback Mountain deserved it, but I actually think Crash was quite overlooked. It centres around a group of people living in LA who are pretty much kind of coming to terms with what happened with the September 11 attacks, while also dealing with racism, gender identity, and just family drama. It's a very well made movie with a stunning cast who give their all. Thandie Newton is actually my favourite in the entire movie. The performance she gives is heartbreaking all the way through, but particularly towards the end of the movie. Sandra Bullock also gives an incredible performance, as does Brendan Fraser. There's a great cast in this one and it just deserves a little bit more love. For me, this is a movie again I can throw on any time of the year and always enjoy it. Now the next category is Western. For me, I'm not a huge Western fan. I haven't watched a whole bunch of Western movies, but my favourite, if I had to pick one, was Django Unchained. Of course, this is by Tarantino. It's an incredible movie overall. It is quite long and it's very brutal. There's a hell of a lot of blood in this one, but I just love the performances by the cast, particularly Leonardo DiCaprio. He plays this kind of cunning and sadistic villain very well that I just didn't really expect from him. It's a movie that does go over the top at times. As I said, it is quite bloody and it is very brutal, but if you know that going into it, you'll have a great time. Again, this is a Tarantino movie, so you do kind of come to expect something like that with what he's offering. Next up, we got the action category, and I have to give this one to Terminator 2. By far, this is my favourite action movie of all time. I absolutely love the first Terminator movie, but with this one, they do just what every good sequel should do. They expand the story. It's a bigger and bolder look at this world, and there's a hell of a lot more action. The action in this movie is mainly done through practical effects, and they pull it off really well. We have Arnold Schwarzenegger as well in the prime of his career, literally doing what he does best, and we have Sarah Connor and John Connor's incredible story. The movie has a lot of action, but it also has a lot of heart to it, particularly the ending of the movie. It does still choke me up if I watch it today. Overall, this is just a great sequel and has everything you could want out of an action movie. So we're down to our last few categories, and this one is romance. I'm going to give this one to Titanic. I just think Titanic as a movie is such an epic spectacle, but also a really incredible love story. There are two characters who are pretty much trying to fight for their lives, fight for their relationship on a doomed ship. This is a 3-hour movie that sets up its first hour by showing us this love story, its second hour by giving us a ton of drama, and in its last act with a hell of a lot of action and a tragic end. Every single time I watch this movie, I hope it's a different ending, and for me that's a sign of a good movie, because it just means it pulls you in every single time. Although it is 3 hours long, at times it doesn't feel like 3 hours long. It does tend to go by quite fast because there's always something happening on screen. It's an incredible movie, and you can tell why it was the biggest box office movie of all time for quite some time. Next up, we got the comic book category, and this one I'm going to give to Superman, the original 1978 version. I absolutely love watching this movie. I'm a massive Superman fan, and this one just represents the comics as best for me. I love watching how this whole story unfolds, the love story between Clark and Lois, and of course the action scenes. This movie, although yes it might be dating a little bit more as time goes on, it still for the most part holds up. There's a lot going on with the movie, and as I said, it just represents Superman in all the best ways. Christopher Reeves also gives a career best performance and pretty much defines himself as the ultimate Superman. I could watch this movie countless times, as well as Superman 2. Although I do really enjoy Superman 2 and I think it's a brilliant sequel, the original one is just a little bit better for me. And finally, we have our adventure category. I'm going to give this one to Jurassic Park. What I love about Jurassic Park is honestly the mix of different genres. You have some horror in there, you have some comedy, and you have a ton of action. Now, as well as that, just the way they mix the practical effects with the CGI, I don't think that's been done as well even today. We recently had Godzilla vs. Kong, and although I really enjoyed the movie, it was just a huge CGI spectacle. With Jurassic Park, you don't get that. You definitely get your CGI in the moment you need it, but you also get a lot of practical effects with the animatronic dinosaurs. As well as that, the characters in this one are brilliant characters that you get to follow through the park, and it just kind of has this awe and wonder to it while also being quite terrifying. Easily, this is my favourite adventure movie. I've seen Jurassic Park more times than I can count, and it just never gets old. But guys, look, that is just my own personal favourite movies in every single genre. As I said guys, I'm going to tag Wolfmans Got Nerds, Carlinio 9 and Movie Worm to give their own personal favourites. Now guys, if you do, you can of course subscribe to the channel and let me know down below what your favourite movies are out of every single genre. Now if you want to see more videos like this one, you can of course click any of the links down below, and I will see you in the next one.